Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of the Throwing Snowballs podcast with PR52. Before I begin, this episode is brought to you by Giants Fans Tears. Brewed from the crying eyes of real Giants fans, this gift is great for moms, dads, and grads. Buy it today. Okay, so after that promotion right there, this is going to be an episode that I really didn't expect to make. I really didn't expect to have to make it because I didn't think that the events that transpired would actually take place. I really didn't. I really did think that I was going to be making one of these podcasts where I was going to talk about how Carson Wentz had once again been mistreated by the media, but that just wasn't in the cards. So whatever football gods came out and slapped that concept right out of my hands, because I got to talk about this. I got to talk about what transpired on Monday morning, afternoon, depending on whatever time zone you live in. And I'm going to try to make this as clear and concise as I can possibly make it. I did not want Doug Pederson to have to be released, to have to be let go. I didn't want that to have to happen. You know, I did pine about it during every single post I made after a game. I said, I want this guy fired because of his inability to call plays, his inability to put players in certain positions to win, and inability to game plan, an inability to develop, inability to do anything a smart head coach should be able to do. But I didn't think that it was actually going to happen. I didn't think that they were going to end up firing Doug Pederson, the only head coach to win a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. There are some positive aspects to this, and there are some negative aspects to this. I want to go over, first of all, the timeline and events that led this to happen. You have to go all the way back to 2015. 2015, the Philadelphia Eagles head coach was Chip Kelly. And Chip Kelly had just been through two 10-6 seasons. And he had a major power struggle with then general manager Howie Roseman. Major power struggle. And the way that the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, was able to make Chip Kelly happy was to give Chip Kelly full power. That was what was being reported. Chip Kelly basically said, hey, get this guy into the storage closet underneath the stairs, or I'm leaving. And as an owner, Jeffrey Lurie, I think he really sat there and was like, look, this guy has been successful with me. I went to the playoffs with this guy. 2 10-6 records in 2 years. I'm personally somebody who doesn't like Chip Kelly, but that's a decision that I think that was the right decision. What he didn't know was that Chip Kelly was going to absolutely blow everything up. Remove guys from the team without getting draft picks in return, making horrible decisions, having Howie Roseman overpay these guys, because Howie Roseman, he just did the contracts. Chip Kelly was, hey, sign this guy. And Howie Roseman signed him. Jettisoning players for no draft picks or for very low capital, getting players that didn't end up working out or were way past their prime. And I think it was all the way till December of 2015. We're playing a game against the Redskins, now the Washington football team. It was basically what you could call the NFC East championship game. I think the Eagles, the best that they could do was 8-8. And the Eagles got absolutely trounced. And you had the Redskins celebrating on our field to win the NFC East. And I think what I remember was that somebody wrote a message, a letter, to Jeffrey Lurie, the owner, and said, fire this dude. He's no good. And Jeffrey Lurie listened. And I wanted it to happen. But I think it was at that point in time, Jeffrey Lurie really thought to himself, look, I can't have a rogue coach like that again. I can't do that. I can't do that to my team. And it was him and Howie Roseman that went out to find the biggest yes man that they could find. And they found Doug Pederson. Now, the one thing that I didn't think that they thought was going to happen was that he was going to win the Super Bowl. And by the way, as much as I've criticized Doug Pederson, I will have to say this and always say this, that I thank Doug Pederson for being the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Okay? But here's the thing. It didn't matter who was playing on that team. It didn't matter who was injured. It didn't matter who was healthy. It didn't matter who was coaching. None of that mattered. It didn't matter who was the water boy. It didn't matter who was the janitor for the locker room. It didn't matter. That team was going to win a Super Bowl. That team was going to win. They were going to win. And I think that at that point, Lurie, Roseman, Pederson, all three of them became extremely pig-headed and thought, I'm the reason why this happened. All three of them. I'm the reason why this happened. And from all parts of the team, the standards went horribly down to the ground. Just inexcusable. Standards went down from everybody. A lot of people want to say, well, the reason why we won the Super Bowl was Frank Reich. I disagreed with that then, and I disagree with that now. Okay, did it help that the Eagles had a good offensive coordinator? Yeah, it helped. But I think at all points, the standards went way, way down, and we never recovered. It never happened. We had bad coordinators coming in to the game, onto the team. We had nepotism all around. We had guys who at all points, all parts, were not taking accountability. We had a locker room that leaked like a sieve. Okay, they were leaking like the Titanic was leaking water in the sinking of the Titanic. That's how it happened. And the standards went down. The talent level went down. We had a few bad drafts. We had a few bad draft picks, and we had some coaches that had bad standards when it came to developing the talent. It all went bad. Okay, the cap room was bad. The fan base and the media were toxic. Every single person, when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles, whether you're the fan base, the media, the team, they all failed. So last year, at around this time, Doug Pederson, there was a report that came out recently that last year, Doug Pederson, he wanted to keep Mike Groh as offensive coordinator. And the thing that you have to understand about Mike Groh is that Mike Groh was even fired by his own dad. Mike Groh is a terrible offensive coordinator. The only thing that Mike Groh ever did that was good was be a wide receivers coach. He couldn't be an offensive coordinator. I remember one time they interviewed him and they were like, what are you going to, how are you going to work Golden Tate into your offense after like 3 weeks? And his answer was, I don't know, but we're trying to figure that out. Golden Tate is one of the best utility players in the NFL. He doesn't have any integrity, but it's hard for an answer as a coach to say, I don't know how to use this guy. Mike Groh was terrible. Absolutely terrible. And at the end of the day, Doug Pederson wanted to keep this guy because you know what it meant? It meant that Doug Pederson would be able to call the plays. That's what it meant. Well, we all thought, okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get an offensive coordinator who can bring some good ideas into this team. And we interviewed a few of them. We reached out to a few of them. And all the candidates were like, that's a hard pass. And the reason why I believe that it was a hard pass from them is because they looked at Doug Pederson and said to themselves, hey, I am a more qualified play caller than this guy is, and he's going to call the plays. That's how it's going to work. So no self-respecting offensive coordinating talent or coach wanted to come into Philadelphia and just be a lackey to Doug Pederson, who isn't good at calling plays at all. He's a horrible play caller. Like, no offense to him. Thanks for the Super Bowl, bud, but you're a horrible play caller. And then apparently for a whole year, we hired two former failing offensive coordinators to be senior advisors to Doug Pederson. And I thought that was a mistake. I don't know who it originally came from, but I'm guessing it came from higher up. That shouldn't have happened. They should have just let Doug Pederson go out there and say, I can do everything, and then watch him fail. Because that's exactly what happened. There was a report that came out that said that Doug Pederson was unhappy about being the Eagles head coach all season long because he didn't get Mike Groh as offensive coordinator. Are you serious? This is where I think everything came to a head. We have a vacancy at defensive coordinator. We have a vacancy at offensive coordinator. They asked Doug Pederson, Howie and Jeffrey Lurie, what do you want to do at offensive coordinator? We want to bring in someone from the outside as kind of like a clean slate for you. Call the plays. You can manage the game because you're bad at both. And Doug Pederson said, no, I want Press Taylor to be my offensive coordinator and either Corey Undlin or Matt Burke to be my defensive coordinator. I wouldn't trust either of those three to walk my dog. Okay, that's basically if Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie agreed to that just kind of like be saying, yeah, it's totally okay that you're leaving our youngest child with an axe-wielding, serial-killing, psychopathic drug dealer. Make sure that the dinner is on the table at 5 p.m. when I get home. It's just ridiculous. If Doug Pederson wasn't fired now and they allowed all of those things to transpire, he would have ended up being fired anyway in the middle of next season. That coaching staff is just an accident waiting to happen. Now, here's what I'm going to say when I say that I didn't want this to have to happen. And my biggest fear is we kind of become like the 49ers of like the last 5 years or so before they hired Shanahan, right? They had Jim Harbaugh, then they got rid of him, and then the gut check hire was Tom Sula, and then they got Chip Kelly. They had 3 head coaches in 3 years. I don't want that to have to happen because there's a good possibility that one of the reasons why you don't want to come to Philly is because you have a Super Bowl winning head coach who won the Super Bowl 3 years ago who got fired because he had a bad season. Now, he didn't just have a bad season. He had a terrible season. The following are the quarterbacks we beat last season. We had a half win against Joe Burrow. We had a win against Daniel Jones, who Daniel Jones was probably one of the most statistically bad quarterbacks in the NFL. Might not have been completely his fault, but he was also bad. Could have been because of COVID. Could have been because he didn't have much of an offseason with his second offensive coordinator. We beat DiNucci. I forget what Ben DiNucci, I think that's what his name was. And we beat Nick Mullins. So we beat a bunch of backups. I think that was it. Oh yeah, we beat Taysom Hill. Of course, we beat a bunch of backups, and we beat Daniel Jones, and that was it. So it's a horrible situation to be in as a team, and I mean, it wasn't just a bad season, it was a horrible season, but most times a Super Bowl winning head coach, they might get an extra chance. They might get an extra year to right the ship. But Doug Pederson didn't get that. And I do feel bad for him about that, but he wasn't doing himself any favors. He was doing himself no favors. So I don't like the fact that he was fired, but what other alternative do you have? Because he was going to be fired anyway, down the line. Now, a lot of people on Twitter and a lot of people in social media, they're saying that, oh, why is Doug gone, but Howie Roseman is still here? Let me give a few theories that I have on this. Theory number one. Howie Roseman, it's an undeniable fact that Howie Roseman built the Super Bowl team, okay? Every single pick or free agency on that team was made by Howie Roseman, besides 2 or 3 players. With Jordan Hicks and Nelson Aguilar were the only ones that weren't. Now, again, that might have bought him some extra time. It doesn't mean he deserves to still be there, but he did win Executive of the Year. Again, people will say, oh, are you Howie Roseman's mom or something like that? I don't think that Howie Roseman should be here. I don't. He's made some really, really boneheaded draft picks. But what I'm going to say, and this is not popular. I don't know how I end up with this every single time. I literally make unpopular opinions all the time. Sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong, okay? I don't make these statements because I was right once. You should never believe people on what they say and just go with it because they've been right a few times, okay? So do your own research. Have your own belief. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm not someone who's like, you have to agree with me or you're a moron. Like, there's a lot of people on Twitter who think that. Doug Pederson is horrible at developing talent. Howie Roseman could be the worst drafter in the NFL, in NFL history, which he's not. We've drafted 6 wide receivers under Howie Roseman since 2016, right? Mac Hollins, Gibson, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins, and John Hightower. You can't tell me that all 6 of those guys sucked. To say that is to say, I'm going to flip a coin 6 times, wanting at least one of them to be heads, but all of them are tails. That is almost a mathematic impossibility. You will never be able to prove to me otherwise. Doug Pederson should have been able to develop one of those wide receivers. One. And somehow we got better production out of practice squad receivers and a dude who used to be a former quarterback in college and a guy who went to Old Dominion. Okay? You cannot tell me that you couldn't develop at least one of those guys. At least one of those guys. Doug Pederson couldn't do it. All right? Howie Roseman couldn't draft. That's true. But Doug Pederson couldn't do it either. So, while I think, yes, it is unfair that Howie Roseman is still on this team and Doug Pederson isn't. But there's at least a theory for why he's still there. Another possible theory for why Howie Roseman is still there is, again, the whole agreement he probably had with Jeffrey Lurie, saying that I will never let a coach get that much power. It is still extremely sad that Doug had to go. I didn't want him to have to go. This is not. I don't want to go ahead and fire a head coach 4 years removed or 3 years removed from a Super Bowl season. I don't want that to happen. But he didn't do himself any favors either. To say Howie Roseman doesn't deserve to stay and Doug does deserve to stay, that's ridiculous. Because they're both problems. We can disagree on the fact that one guy was more of a problem than another guy. That's perfectly fine. I personally believe that Doug was more of a problem. Was Howie Roseman making these decisions in order to, what plays were going to be called? Did he make the decisions on not running the ball enough? Was he the reason why we had some of the most turnovers in the league last season? Was he the reason why adjustments weren't made at halftime? Adjustments weren't made after the first 15 plays? No, that's Doug's job. Doug's job is to develop the talent, and you can't tell me that we didn't have enough talent to win this division. We needed to win 6.5 games to win this division. If we won one more game plus that Washington game at the very end, we would have won the division. Okay, so you can't tell me we didn't have enough talent to win the division, because that would also say that all these other teams in our division, the Giants, Washington football team, and the Cowboys also didn't have enough talent. So here we are. Here we are with this. And I guess the final thing that I'm going to say in this podcast, I know it's a little bit short. The final thing that I'm going to talk about here is the response by the media. And here's where I'm going to bring Carson Wentz into this a little bit. For 3 weeks, there were reports coming out about how Carson Wentz was upset about what was going on in Philly, and a guy said he expected Carson Wentz to want to be traded. And for 3 or 4 weeks, the media hounded Carson Wentz, hounded him hard, called him a bad teammate, said that he didn't want what was best for the team, saying that he was weak-minded and weak-willed. Said that basically under the sun, saying that Carson Wentz was a horrible person. One dude even wrote an article about how, the Eagles wanting to trade Carson Wentz was an example of white privilege because Carson Wentz wasn't being blown through the mud, which he was. You had dudes being like, Carson Wentz is weak-minded, or I think it was Ryan Clark, and replaced the Rocky statue with a Jalen Hurts statue. Dude was dragged through the mud and hasn't even said anything publicly. Has not even said anything publicly. But Doug Pederson basically gets released because he wanted to bring in 2 guys who couldn't walk my dog to babysit the offense and defense. And reports came out that he wanted to leave after Mike Groh got released or got sent home. He wanted gone all season. He mailed it in. And the main narrative by the media is, how could the Eagles do this to Doug Pederson? How could they not give him who he wanted? How could they not leave the team in the amazing hands of Press Taylor and Matt Burke or Corey Undlin? Just leave it with that. It's so overplayed. I knew it was going to happen. I knew that the media wasn't going to give Doug Pederson that same energy that they gave Carson Wentz. I knew it. Let me just say this, and I can expect this for the rest of Carson Wentz's career. The media is not going to be nice to Carson Wentz. They're not going to. And I'm someone who, if Pederson stayed, I wanted Carson Wentz to go because I wanted him to have a good opportunity elsewhere. And I don't know who we're going to have as head coach this year. I don't know if we're going to have a good head coaching opportunity here. I don't know if this is an attractive place to be. It might be a more attractive place than Houston. But here's the problem. If the Eagles don't right this ship fast, then there's just going to be a huge meltdown. I'd like to rewind everything for a second. I would like to go, what if Doug Pederson stayed, he got Press Taylor, and he got Corey Undlin or Matt Burke, and Howie Roseman was fired? Would things be any different? Would people be more happy about that? I'm sure some people would. But here's the thing. Until Jeffrey Lurie realizes that he needs to give his coaches more control, until he hits rock bottom and pretty much is honest about Howie Roseman, because Howie Roseman hasn't been good with the contracts and with the drafting, Until that happens, there's not going to be any changes. There's not going to be any accountability. And what's really funny is, I've been going around Twitter. People have been saying that I'm Howie Roseman's sock account, his backup account. It's ridiculous. If that's the way you argue, then you've just got bricks in your head. Howie Roseman deserves to go. And I believe that. And I believe that there are probably better GM characters out there for this team. And Howie Roseman, he's just not it. Now, the difference between, and this is the final point I'm going to make, the difference between what Doug did and what Howie did this offseason is, I think, a bit of a reason more for why Howie Roseman was kept and why Doug Pederson wasn't. Doug Pederson said, hey, I love my guys, Press Taylor and Matt Burke. Bring them in, okay? They will make this team better, okay? I'm not the problem, okay? I'm the solution. So let me bring back in the problem guys that hindered our team for years. On the other side of the spectrum, Howie Roseman said this: I'm a problem. My drafting has sucked. My track record is not good. So I'm going to bring in John Dorsey, someone who's really good with players and personnel, to make or help me make better decisions while drafting as a consultant, because I'm a problem. You didn't see that from Doug. So to me, and where I'm sitting, there's more accountability on the side of Howie while he's a problem and while he doesn't deserve to be here than there is for Doug, who was a problem and doesn't deserve to be here. And if he had stayed and got what he wanted, he would be gone in the middle of next season. There's no doubt in my mind. By the way, this isn't the first time this has happened in the NFL. This isn't the first time a head coach with a lot of experience who went to Super Bowls left the team prematurely. Does the name Mike Holmgren ring a bell? Who went to the Super Bowl in 96 and 97? And by 99, he was no longer a part of the team because he wanted power and the team wasn't willing to give him power. So the way I see this is that this is a no-win situation, the Kobayashi Maru. If anyone's ever watched Star Trek, it's the no-win scenario. And I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea. I don't have any answers. You want to ask me what head coaching candidates I like? I'll probably tell you one, and he's going to end up sucking, just like usual. But what I'm going to say is this. I thank Doug Pederson for everything he's done for this team because we needed him to win that Super Bowl. But ultimately, this decision was going to be made because there was going to be no improvements next season. None. You saw Jalen Hurts out there, and he started to eerily play like Carson Wentz did. He actually played worse than Carson Wentz did in certain aspects of the game. Not that he's a bad player. Not that he's going to be a bad player. Not that he's going to be a bust like Carson Wentz is a disappointing player. But what I'm going to say is this. This is a multifaceted thing. People have their narratives, which is fine. People aren't speaking the 100% the facts, which is fine. The one thing that I'm considering in my head is this. PR52, Hank, what if you're wrong about all this? What if Howie Roseman really is the problem and Doug Pederson was less than 5% the problem? Well, then this team is screwed. This team is absolutely screwed, and wherever Doug goes next, he's going to be very successful. If I'm wrong. Now, I could be wrong. I could be right. Who knows? I could be in the middle. But no matter what, while I wanted Doug to eventually be fired, it's kind of a loss for the Eagles in many perspectives. And I hope that eventually Jeffrey Lurie can hit rock bottom and realize his mistakes and how to right them. Or else, again, this team is completely screwed. You guys all have a nice day. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll be back for the third episode. This isn't even a real episode. This is just a special episode because of the firing of Doug Pederson. Again, thank you, Doug, for everything you've done. Now it's time to go to greener pastures and do what's right for you because you weren't working here anyway. All right, guys, have a nice day. Bye.